Hello everyone. In today's video, I'm going to be continuing the series on Dracula / the Frankenstein Universal Monster series. One would think after the way the House of Frankenstein ended that would have been the last Universal Monsters movie, but unfortunately, Universal had to push it to the limit to make another one. Also, one would think the way that Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman died, that would have been the proper finale. But as a die-hard Universal Monster fan, I'll watch the movie anyway. Also, I wasn't really sure how to include this one, whether it inquired in the Dracula reviews or the Frankenstein reviews. Despite the title, Dracula's not really the only main focus in the movie. Not only is it a sequel to Dracula, it's also a sequel to Frankenstein and the Wolfman too. Just like the title of House of Frankenstein, Dracula gets his own title with House in it. What, no house for House of Wolfman? Why not call it the Slumber Party Universal Monsters or House of the Monsters? That would be a proper, better title for this movie. It's the 5th film in the Dracula series, the 7th in the Frankenstein series, and the 4th in the Wolfman series. House of Dracula was directed by Earl C. Kent and was produced by Paul Mavern. The story was written by George Bricker and Dwight V. Babcock, and the screenplay was done by Edward T. Lowe. The movie stars Lon Chaney Jr., Martha O'Driscoll, John Carradine, Onslow Stevens, Glenn Strange, Jane Addams, Ludwig Stossel, and Lionel Atwell. Once again! They just loved bringing Lionel Atwell back in this series. As I mentioned in one of my previous reviews, Dwight Fry has a small part cameos like the Stan Lee, so is Lionel Atwell. The story of the House of Dracula is about Dracula's tired of his vampirism and wants to be cured. Dracula asks Dr. Edelman to help him cure his vampire curse, but Dracula only uses Dr. Edelman to get to nurse Meliza. The Wolfman asks Dr. Edelman to cure his werewolf curse. On top of this, Dr. Edelman and Lawrence Talbot find the Frankenstein Monster. You know what time it is? As usual, it's time to show my DVD/Blu-ray collection of House of Dracula. First time I saw House of Dracula was on this Universal Monster DVD Dracula set. But before I even saw the movie, I knew about it from some behind-the-scene footage from some other of the Universal Monster, Frankenstein, or Dracula movie series. And of course, 2021, here are the Blu-rays. House of Dracula's in all three: The Wolfman, Frankenstein, and of course the Dracula Blu-ray set. I'll admit, this is not the worst, but it's definitely one of the weakest of the series. It's very lazy at times. It basically rehashes House of Frankenstein. The film cannot make up its mind on whether or not this film wants to be a Dracula movie, a Frankenstein movie, a Wolfman film. The ending of this movie is very lazy because they use the same footage from Ghost of Frankenstein when the Frankenstein monster burns alive. The scientific explanation behind this film was total BS and garbage, especially what they had established in the last previous Universal Monster movies about the monsters. The film feels really rushed at times. You can tell they did not take their time to tell a proper story. The movie's very lazy. They didn't even explain about how the monsters survived from the last movie. When Dracula tells Edelman that he wants to be cured, let's be honest, that was a complete joke. That was basically a cover-up so that way he can get to nurse Meliza. How is Dracula still alive after dying in the last film from sunlight? Despite the film being the weakest of the series, there are some good moments in the movie and some highlights that were pretty good. One good highlight in this film is Onslow Stevens as Dr. Edelman. He's a very likable character. Unlike Dr. Niemann, who did not care about helping Lawrence Talbot and Daniel, he really cared about helping Lawrence Talbot be cured of his werewolf curse. Dr. Edelman also wanted to help Nina, but because of Talbot's serious werewolf curse and because the operation was serious and delicate, he felt bad for postponing her operation. But Nina was a good sport and understood that she had to wait longer for the operation to be performed right. Because of how serious and delicate the procedure is, Dr. Edelman wants to make sure that nothing goes wrong during the operation of correcting Nina's hunchback hump behind her back. After Dr. Edelman kills Dracula, before Edelman killed Dracula, Dracula transported his blood into Dr. Edelman's body. He becomes a Dr. Jekyll type-like character throughout the rest of the movie. And like all scientists, he wants to bring the Frankenstein monster back to life. When you think about it, Dr. Amelon is basically the monster doctor because Dracula, the werewolf, and the Frankenstein monster appear out of nowhere to ask him for help. The part where Dr. Adelman kills the coach driver, that was very scary and suspenseful. Another good thing about this film is Larry Talbot's stories being very consistent. Instead of wanting to die like he wanted to in the last few films, he wants Dr. Adelman to cure his werewolf curse. Just like Dracula, how did he survive the gunshot from the last movie? The jailhouse scene when Larry is locked up because he turns into a werewolf, this prevents him from killing people. When Dr. Adelman first meets Larry Talbot, he doesn't believe him at first that Larry's a werewolf. But when Larry turns into the werewolf, then he finally believes him. When Adelman explains to Larry the scientific explanation of his werewolf curse, it kind of takes away the premise of the first films about the Wolfman being a supernatural. The other good thing about this film is when Larry finally gets closure and peace, and a proper finale, happy ending after all he's been through in the last few movies. Lawrence Talbot did not want to turn Dr. Adelman in after being a witness and being suspicious of him murdering the coach driver. The reason why Larry does not turn Dr. Adelman in because of how much Larry was thankful for him curing his werewolf curse and being grateful for him. But in the end, Larry had no choice but to kill him because the monster inside Dr. Adelman took over him. The love interest for Larry in this movie kind of comes like out of nowhere. There's really like nothing interesting about like the love interest for Larry. There's really not much chemistry there. The character Nina played by Jane Addams is basically like Daniel's character in House of Frankenstein. She's basically the hunchback as a female. The only difference is she has like no like revenge plot against anybody and has no hatred towards anybody. And she's not a bad character, she's just too similar to Daniel in House of Frankenstein. Even though this film is like the weakest, but I do not consider it like the worst like movie ever made. I mean, it's bad, yes, and it does stink, but the film is a little bit overrated, just in my opinion. It's also sad like this was the last finale for the monsters and the Monster Bash of Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Wolfman. Even though they made Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein, but that's a completely different film. That's my next review. So that was my review of House of Dracula. Hope you liked the video. Please like the video, subscribe, hit that notification bell to get the latest updates on my YouTube channel. So stay tuned for my next review, Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. See you next time.